Hi, just wanted to upload another video and talk about one of my um, pet triggers, or I don't know if it's a trigger, but it's something that I do suffer with quite a lot, and it's something that sort of rears its ugly head probably quite often. It is a known sort of depression trigger, I think, and it happens to me quite frequently. Once I tell you what it is, a lot of people will sort of identify with it, I'm sure. It's something called imposter syndrome. Um, it is not something that's sort of like very clinic. I think there is something about it clinically and stuff like that. I've never looked into it into a lot of depth, but I have sort of researched and tried to understand a little bit about what I'm feeling when I'm in that sort of mode and feeling like I'm a bit of a impostor, probably the best way to say it. It is exactly what it says. You're in. And a lot of times it happens in a work environment than maybe somewhere else, but you really feel like you are an imposter. You're not somebody that should be there, and it can be quite debilitating because you're always worried about being found out. For me, probably for myself, it's a lot of times it's at work. I think I have, in some instances, I think people think I have a lot of self confidence, and I probably exhibit a lot of self confidence, but within myself, I think sometimes there's a lot of doubt in my abilities and what I can and cannot do. And so imposter syndrome is something that I sort of struggle with quite frequently. Um, a lot of times it can be, especially around when you're providing some sort of report or table or chart or anything that's of some sort of thing that somebody else needs to look at. And at that point in time, you've then got to hand it over and hand your work over to somebody else. And that's where it can really sort of start to sort of unravel. And the usual sort of triggers that go along with this are sort of like, they're going to see what I'm like, then they'll go and then they being, your boss, your manager, whoever it happens to be, maybe senior leadership, and those sort of people, they'll see what you've done, they'll see it's not up to spec, then they'll start to sort of think about, is this person the right one? You'll start worrying every time they look at you that they're thinking that something they're worried about what type of work you're doing and how well you're doing it. Then you start having sort of doubts about the next piece of work, and you start fretting over that. So then you might hold on to that piece of work even longer than actually necessary, thereby then sort of nearly sort of starting some destructive sequences because you're then not handing things in time. That'll then trigger some more sort of imposter sort of concerns because you haven't handed that work in. Again, they're going to start to see through you and think that you're not the person that they think you are or that you say you are. Then they're going to start to sort of think that you're not good enough for the role that you're in, and so on and so forth. And it starts unraveling, and your confidence around your role starts to unravel quite a lot as well. And you start to have real doubts around what your real ability is and what you can actually do. I come across this quite a lot. I'm also a manager. I have been in senior leadership positions, and a lot of times I do have those doubts floating through my brain quite a lot whenever anything's going on. And a lot of times it happens when you are probably trying something new, and so therefore those doubts are more prone because you are actually in that sort of space where you are doing something new, and you might not know this. But I think you've got that expectation of yourself that you should be able to do this stuff really easily and be able to showcase that all your talents and be able to bring everything to the fore and be able to do this stuff. And then when something is maybe a little bit more difficult, or you feel like you have to ask for some clarifications or stuff, it's always then the things that they'll think that I can't do this, that I'm not good enough, and all of these sort of things start to sing. And that then can also then lead to that catastrophizing, which I talked about previous as well. Imposter syndrome can lead to that, where you're then sort of saying, oh, then they're going to fire me, then I'm never going to find another job, then I'm going to be unemployed, or I won't be able to provide for my family, then my wife will leave me because I can't support them. Kids will not be very impressed or think badly of me. So then I'll lose my kids, then I'll lose my house, and it just spirals out of control. And, sometimes that just starts with this sort of feeling that you're an imposter, that you shouldn't be in the role that you are. It's too good for you. You're not good enough to do it. And so you constantly then have to, you feel like you have to justify yourself. In my own way, in the own stuff that I do, I've tried to sort of think about it in a bit of more of a practical way. A lot of times when you are given something new to do, which is sometimes for me the trigger, you've got to realize that it is new. It is maybe something that you haven't done, and that you need to sort of think about this as if it was anything new. It's about sort of saying, okay, well, what would I normally do in this situation? I might ask for help. I might read a book. I might do some internet research to understand what I'm looking at and what I'm trying to do. I would do all these things, and that doesn't mean that I'm an imposter and I don't know what I'm doing in some of my other ways. It just means that I'm trying to understand what I'm trying to do here. It shouldn't be then a trigger for you to then sort of start to sort of unravel, as it were. So asking for help, researching that. Sometimes it's also something else that I might do is I might then work with my manager on a plan so that I've actually got some way to start, so that then I'm giving input into that sort of plan. And my manager's having some sort of input into that plan as well, so that we know that we're on the right target. And we might also put in there check-ins. And I know I'm talking a lot about work here, but a lot of times this is when this hits for me. So I've got to sort of think about that. That's my triggers and what I'm looking at it. And I think from an imposter point of view, I think the work scenario is probably the most likely. I think some people sometimes have imposter syndrome maybe when they're in a group of friends that they don't know, or going to business functions or those sort of things. And it's the same sort of thing. You've got to then put aside those thoughts and think about it from a more practical point of view. Why am I here? If you're going to a business luncheon or going to some sort of event or something like that where these sort of thoughts take you, it's about, why am I here? Well, I might have been invited because of my knowledge. I might have been invited as a friend, so I don't have to impress anybody, or whatever it happens to be. Also, when you're asking for this help and going through these plans, you're also then making sure that people understand that you are maybe not quite sure of yourself, or you're not quite right. So you do need to build in those check-ins. That will then also help to sort of make sure that you're feeling comfortable with what you need to do. In that sort of sense, you're not trying to be somebody you're not. You're actually showcasing that you are, look, sometimes I need some help. And everybody is in that same sort of boat. I think with imposter syndrome, the thing that most likely is sort of triggering is that you want to impress, you want to showcase that you can handle these things, and you don't believe in yourself that you can do these things. And so therefore, everything is about you. You're sort of saying, oh, well, I should be able to do this. I should be able to run this. I should be able to attend that meeting. I should be able to do these and these things. And sometimes it's about sort of stepping back and saying, okay, maybe it's not about I might need some help here, and that's okay. You're not showcasing that you're weak or not able to do this. You're just sort of saying, can I just grab some help? Because you might be overwhelmed with all the other stuff that you're doing. And that's also sometimes a trigger. You've got too much stuff on, so therefore you're not performing at your best. So then there's also that coming in at that point in time as well. You're maybe not feeling like that you're being able to put your best foot forward. So therefore that triggers that imposter syndrome. And that's sometimes the case for me. A lot of times my trigger around this is when I am really, I won't say stressed, but really got a lot of work and I'm overwhelmed by the amount of work. And so therefore I can't do the best job in everything. And so therefore then those ideas of somebody, you're going to be found out that you don't know as much as you can then really trigger. So imposter syndrome is something that I have heard mentioned lots and lots by lots of different people throughout my working life. It is something that is fairly common, but it doesn't mean that it's not debilitating in its own right. And I think sometimes what you've got to do is you've got to take a step back and sort of realize the situation you're in to sort of make sure that you can sort of try and attack this in a practical way. Ask for help, ask for a plan forward. Maybe even if you're worried that you're not going to be able to put your best foot forward, ask for some help for some of the other tasks, whether it's from your colleagues, from your manager, whoever it happens to be. It'll ask them to give you some support so that you can motive through this, so that you're not only not struggling against yourself and a new task and all the other work that you're doing, and so therefore you can do your best. Imposter syndrome is something, like I said, that I struggle with. I struggle with it most, I won't say most days, but when there's something new on, I do have issues with it. So if you're the same, try and sort of dial it back and think about it in a much more clinical way. Anyway, hopefully this video has been good. And it's given you a sort of insight into how other people feel and other people sort of have this. And hopefully there's some solutions there that you might try as well. Anyway, good luck. Look after yourself and also take care of yourself as well. It's very important.